How's it going, everyone? I am so stoked to have you here with me today. This is the Manuscript Podcast, where we believe 21st century man controls his destiny, that his choices define his future, and that he writes the script to his own life. I'm your host and fellow man, Reuben Stamper, and as always, it is an honor, a pleasure, and a privilege to have you here with me today. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you enjoy the episode, please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot. So, in keeping with the last episode and with the episodes to come, we're talking about virtue. All these badass virtues that are going to make you into the best man you can be, and most importantly, as I have tried to proclaim the project of this podcast as, to make you the happiest man you can be. So last week we talked all about courage, and courage is, I think, objectively one of the sexiest virtues. You look at it and you think, oh man, that is the thing that makes men so badass. You know, this is something that I've always, ascribed to be. I want to be courageous. I want to be strong and bold and brave. All these things that I think men objectively just relate to very well. And so, courage, it's a sexy virtue. It's true. But today, we're not talking about courage because we talked about that last episode. We are talking about temperance. Now, a lot of people, when they hear of the virtue of temperance, that word, the air just kind of deflates from their tires and they get a little down and out. They're like, I don't want to hear about this. This is temperance. Like, that's just a thing that tells me not to go do fun things that involve pleasure, right? And that is probably how a lot of people have painted it as for you. But I'm here to tell you that's not the case. Temperance is objectively one of the most badass virtues as well. Because it's not just dealing with saying no to things. It is saying, it deals with saying yes to the best things. Saying no to the mediocre things in life that aren't going to bring you the most happiness. And saying yes to the things that will objectively bring you the most happiness and fulfillment and joy. That's what temperance does. So, in keeping with the format for the last podcast, we're going to be talking about what temperance is, why you should want it, because I think it's incredibly important, and our culture does not do a great job of it, of explaining why you should want things. They tell you should want this or that, and then they just say that like it's a given fact without giving reasons for why you should want the thing. So I'm going to tell you what temperance is, why you should want it, and then how you get it. 3 very practical steps. And then, as we're talking about how you get it part of things, I also want to touch on the 3 men that Aristotle talks about in regard to temperance. So, if you watched the last episode, we talked about the 3 men in regards to courage, right? And this 3-man format that Aristotle gives you when he's talking about each virtue is so helpful because it tells you where you're at. And you can correct course depending on where you're at. So the 3 men, I'll throw them out there real fast, that we're going to talk about is the self-indulgent man, because that's one extreme, when it comes to the virtue of temperance. There's the underindulgent or the insensitive man is also what it's called, and that is the other extreme when it comes to temperance. And then there is the temperate man, which is what you should aim for in all circumstances. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Let's talk about what temperance is. Temperance is the virtue that deals with partaking in the proper amount of pleasure. Let's break that definition down real fast. The 2 things I want to talk about are the word proper and pleasure. The 2 P's. First off, let's start with the basis that pleasure is not a bad thing. Now, I'm Catholic, and I think that Catholics and Christians get a very bad rap when it comes to pleasure. People, and damn, a lot of it's self-inflicted. I'm not gonna lie about that. But, pleasure is not a bad thing. And, I know for a fact the Catholic Church says that pleasure is not a bad thing. It is actually inherently a good thing. So I'm not coming at this from the angle of, pleasure is a bad thing and all pleasure is evil. I don't believe that. And all these arguments I make in this podcast are from a non-religious perspective. But I want to be very clear. I think pleasure is a good thing. So then let's circle back around to that proper part of the definition, where I say the proper amount of pleasure. pleasure is not a bad thing until it pulls you away from being happy. When it divorces you from happiness, then pleasure is inherently a bad thing. I would say anything that is leading you away from true happiness, and I don't mean happiness, as I've said before, in the sense of like the pleasure of Doritos on your couch. No, I mean happiness in the truest and deepest and fullest sense. And that's what temperance helps you to achieve. All the virtues help you to achieve that. But temperance, I think specifically in the world we live in today, where we are constantly, infiltrated with a push for so much pleasure. Just indulge here, indulge here, indulge here. Have some of this, have some of that. Our culture is constantly pushing that onto us of like, you need more pleasure, you need more pleasure. And once again, I don't think pleasure is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But I do think that we overindulge a lot in our culture, and that is leading a lot of men to be unhappy. So damn it, I'm going to talk about temperance, because this is the virtue that's going to get you out of that. And also, by the way, I don't want people to turn around and say this is just the cat calling the kettle black. I mean, I'm not the best at temperance. Damn, I'm bad at ice cream. If it's in my house, I eat it, okay? In a lot of areas of my life, I think I am relatively temperate, but there are certain things I still have a lot to work on in regards to this. So I'm learning with you guys. I'm learning with you. And so this is also a pep talk to me to make myself better, because I've got a lot of room to grow. But temperance, the virtue that deals with partaking in the proper amount of pleasure. Pleasure's good up until a point. Past that point, if it divorces you from happiness, it's bad. We'll start with that basis, so we're all on the same page. So, we've talked about what temperance is. Now let's talk about why you should want it. To begin with, the temperate man is always respected. Why is that? Why is it that the temperate man garners so much respect? It's because I think an inherent part of respect is doing something difficult, earning it, right? Putting your nose to the grindstone and saying, I'm going to conquer this thing. And conquering your own appetites, your own senses and passions is difficult, objectively difficult. This is a very hard virtue to become great at, but it's worth trying. It's worth trying, but it's difficult. And so the man who can actually take temperance and make it a part of his life, everybody is going to look at him with a bit of awe, because it's difficult. Right? So let's talk about this man real fast, why he would be respected. He's the kind of guy that can say no to pleasures that he can see in the future are not going to lead to his overall happiness. So this guy has his buddy come in from out of town, and he works the next day, right? So this guy works the next day, but his buddy's coming in from out of town. And his buddy's like, hey, man, let's go have a couple drinks together. And the temperate man, because he is temperate, and he understands that pleasure is a good thing, but only up until a point, he says, sure, man, let's go. I'm so excited you're coming into town. I can't wait to see you. So they go to a bar together, and they're hanging out, and they're good friends. They've been friends for a couple years. And his buddy's, trying to push more and more drinks onto him, because he kind of wants to get sloshed, because the buddy doesn't work the next day, but the temperate man does. And the temperate man's like, dude, man, I'm having a blast, but I'm gonna hold it off at like two or three drinks. So I'm not having more than that. And he's doing that for a reason, because if he has more than 3 drinks, then the odds are pretty high that he's gonna have a really shitty next day at work. And he's not going to be able to bring his full self to work. And he's not going to be able to provide the quality of work that his boss expects or that his clients expect. And so he says, listen, this isn't going to help me contribute to my duty, which is to be a good worker tomorrow. So part of this is like, it's not going to help me reach a higher pleasure, but it's going to help me do the things that I said I was going to do, to actually follow through with being a good, employee or a good boss, whatever that is. So there's that aspect. The temperate man. Also, let's say he goes to work, okay? And let's say he's married and he's got a couple kids with this wonderful woman. He's married to this woman, and he loves her to death. And there's this secretary at work that tries to come on to him, right? And the temperate man, without skipping a beat, says, get away from me. get away from me. I don't want you. I don't want you. I love my wife more than anything. I'm going to stay true to her. And there's nothing you can do to ever change that. And the temperate man, sure, has the desire for sex. It's not an uncommon thing, like he wants the sex from a passion standpoint, but he understands it will not contribute to his happiness down the road. It will destroy the things that he actually finds the most joy in, which is a great family life, a great relationship with his wife, with his children. And he knows all that in an instant, for one taste of pleasure, could be gone. So he says, no. Get the hell out of here. No, that's not what I want. It's not going to lead me to be a happier man. The temperate man will wake up on time, and he will finish what he said he was going to do. He will wake up. He'll work out in the morning, right? And maybe it's just this is just an example, but let's say that he works out in the morning before he goes into work. And in order to do that, he says, okay, I want to watch another episode of The Office because it's freaking hilarious. But it's 9:30. I'm going to bed because I have to wake up early and work out the next day. And anybody in the world who is seeing this guy, at first they're going to make jokes about him. They're going to rib him. They're going to give him shit. They're going to say, man, you're just boring. You're so boring these days. But in the back of their mind, they're going to look at him and they're going to say, damn, I respect that. I really do respect that. I mean, just the discipline he has to say no to these things so he can say yes to these things. There's trade-offs everywhere in life, and so he's able to look down the road and say, what is my tomorrow self going to think about my action right now? And that's a big part of being temperate. So that's one of the biggest reasons that I think you should try and be temperate, is because, first off, it will help you order your life towards happiness, towards achieving your goals, towards having amazing relationships. All the things that a man dreams of, temperance helps you with. So that's why you should try and be temperate. And yes, you will be much more respected if you decide to pursue temperance. There's a big lack of that in today's culture because pleasure is pushed on us from every angle. It is the easiest thing to sell. I mean, you've all heard the saying, like, sex sells, right? I mean, our culture is crazy sexualized, and I think that's been really bad for a lot of men's brains. But sex sells. It's an easy, cheap pleasure, right? Food. I mean, gosh, how much advertising do we have for food all over the place? And once again, I am pro-food, pro-drinking, pro-sex. I'm pro all these things in the right contexts. That's where temperance comes into play. So I understand. This is why I say it's super difficult, especially in today's age where the world is constantly pushing you to partake in more and more pleasure. It's hard to stand up to that. And that's why I kind of talked about courage first before I went into temperance, because I think that to be temperate requires a certain level of courage to actually stand up to the thing in front of you and say, no, my passions say yes, my senses say yes, my appetites say yes, but my truest desire for happiness says no. So get the hell out of here. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing. And so, once again, I have a lot of room to grow in this department, but I hope I've given you a reason for why you should want to be temperate, why you should aspire to be the temperate man. Okay, so we've talked about what temperance is, why you should want it. Now let's talk about how you get it. And so, but before we get into this, I want to talk about the three men that Aristotle talks about in regard to temperance. So these three men are the self-indulgent man, the underindulgent or insensitive man. We'll call him the underindulgent man, and then the temperate man, which is like the pinnacle of temperance. So the self-indulgent man, I believe, is probably the most common man in this world we live in today. And I've definitely been him from time to time, but the self-indulgent man goes overboard with pleasure. He is almost, to a degree, addicted to pleasure. He can't say no. He's like a child, right? He just, like children are kind of like this, they just want more and more and more cookies. And at the end of the day, if you give them all the cookies, they're going to feel like crap afterwards because they're going to have a tummy ache. They're going to feel awful. And this guy is just like an adult who's a child, right? He can't say no, right? So he's constantly spending all his money at the bars, drinking all the time, or he can't stop eating, right? Or he's a serial cheater, right? He can't stay in a relationship because he's always sleeping with the next woman because he just like that desire for pleasure it overtakes his life. It encompasses his entire life. His life revolves around getting the next pleasure hit. So don't be the self-indulgent man, because you'll never accomplish your goals and you'll never actually become happy because you are addicted to pleasure. So don't be the self-indulgent man. And once again, like I said, he is everywhere. And I've been here from time to time. I'm really bad with ice cream. Everybody's got their thing they need to work on. But don't be the self-indulgent man. All right, next let's talk about the underindulgent man. Now, this guy he's pretty rare. However, I have run into him, okay? So I went to I know people are going to give me shit for this. I'm proudly Catholic. I went to a Catholic college. And there were actually a decent amount of these people there. I love my college. It was a great experience for me. But there were a couple people here that were, in my opinion, the underindulgent man. Who is the underindulgent man? Like, what is his philosophy on pleasure? He thinks pleasure is a necessary evil, right? He looks at food and drinking and sex, and he says, "Oh, they're just things that have to happen. I guess people have to have sex so they can have babies. But if I could make it a different way, man, we would never have sex because that's pleasure and that's evil." You know, he looks at things like this all the time. He thinks pleasure is evil, and like I said, he's very rare in today's culture. And I think that these people give Christians and Catholics and a lot of religions a really shitty rep, because like Catholicism, man, we like the religion of drinking. Like we like to have a good time. But a lot of Christians and stuff, they do have this weird puritanical mindset that like pleasure in all forms is bad. It's like, no, pleasure in the right forms is amazing and it should be partaken in. In the wrong form, sure, avoid it. But anyways, that's what the underindulgent man is like. So it's pretty rare that you run into this guy, but he does exist. He's out there. And then let's talk about the pinnacle, the best, the temperate man. So the temperate man, as I stated before, is constantly able to tell himself no in the right circumstances. He understands when things are required. Like so for instance, if he goes to a wedding, he'll probably drink a little more than he would on a weekday. Why? Because he knows that part of the ceremony, part of the wedding, it is to celebrate, just to celebrate this new couple and the new life they're embarking on together, right? So he's like, yeah, screw it. I'm going to have a couple more drinks than I normally do. I'm going to get a little buzz. I'm going to feel great. I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to celebrate with everyone. So he's great at parties, man. The temperate man's great at parties. But he also, can say no to things when he knows that it's going to affect his future happiness. Like I talked about before, like he will eat the proper amount of food. He will enjoy it. He'll savor it, but he won't eat so much that he's going to feel like shit the next day, or he's going to ruin his goals when it comes to, health or fitness. He will get the proper amount of sleep so he can be there for his wife and his children and his job, all those things. He will sacrifice some of the pleasure of watching a show really late at night and feeling like shit the next day when you wake up early for work. He'll say, no, I'm going to go to bed on time. Yeah, it sucks, but I can always watch it tomorrow night. I'll watch that show tomorrow night, okay? And so he's willing to sacrifice the lower pleasures for the higher pleasures. And there's a myth in our culture that these higher pleasures don't really exist, and that is kind of bullshit. That like this whole discipline thing, like it's not actually going to lead to happiness. That's not true. Like when I am living a more temperate life, I am objectively happier, 100%. My mood's better, and happiness is not just your mood. I'm not trying to say that, but my mood is better. My work ethic is better. Everything in my life is elevated when I live temperately, when I eat the proper amount but not too much, when I get enough sleep, when I don't drink too much. All these things, when they come together, they give you a much happier life, as all the virtues do. But that's basically what the temperate man is. He's perfect, or near damn perfect, at knowing the proper amount of pleasure to partake in. So if you find yourself being, whether you're the underindulgent man or the overindulgent man, correct course. All right, aim a little bit. If you're underindulgent, aim for the overindulgent guy, because then you'll probably hit somewhere in the middle, which will be the temperate man. If you're overindulgent, aim to be the underindulgent guy, because you'll probably hit somewhere in the middle, which is the temperate man. So you can work on that. So now, how do you work on it? That's the question, because we talked about now, once again, what temperance is, why you should want it, and now let's talk specifically about how you get it. Temperance is achieved from minor decisions time and time again. Right? So it's setting limits for yourself and sticking to those limits, right? So next time you go to a party with your friends, and once again, maybe you've got work the next day, or you've got a huge Saturday plan, and you're like, I don't want to feel like shit because I've got a lot to do. You say, hey guys, dude, I can't wait to hang out with you, but I'm only going to have 2 drinks tonight. You tell yourself that, and then just stick to it. Make that limit and stick to it. Or when you say you're going to wake up early. Don't cheat yourself out of that, right? Make these decisions and then stick to them. And over time, you will build this backbone of temperance, and you will start to understand, oh, wow, man, when I make these decisions, these tiny decisions across the whole, spectrum of my life, I'm going to look up and say, oh my gosh, I have accomplished more. I feel better. I'm happier. So there's that aspect of that's one way that you build temperance. Another way is to take the time to think about your actions before doing them. And this is something that is obviously easier said than done. But I have found, like certain things in my life, like if I don't have enough sleep, that affects my ability to think about these things. But one great way to look at temperance is to, like, before you partake in something, just for like 5 seconds, ask yourself the question, will myself tomorrow look back and be happy with this decision I'm about to make? It's pretty simple, If I eat the whole cake, will Reuben tomorrow look back and be like, you fat ass, you dumbass, like, why did you do that? The answer is yes. So that's a gauge I have right there to be like, okay, I'm going to try and be temperate. I'm going to have a piece. Maybe I'll have 2 pieces, but I'm not going to eat the whole thing. Or in my case, it's ice cream. But in all these cases where temperance is required, just ask yourself that question. It's a very simple litmus test almost for like, okay, is this a temperate thing? Is it not? Will my tomorrow self hate me for this? Or will he be like, good call, that was the right thing to do, And, for me, sometimes, by the way, I do want to be clear, like, sometimes I have a pint of ice cream in front of me, and I think that, and then I think, you know what? My tomorrow self would probably be fine with me because I've done really well throughout the rest of the week. I'm going to treat myself a little bit. I'm going to have this pint of ice cream. And so then I do, and I enjoy it, and I've made that decision mentally in my head. It was a conscious decision. I didn't just indulge in the pleasure to indulge in it. I thought about it, and then I indulged in it. And then my tomorrow self looked at it and said, okay, that's cool. I know you made that decision in that moment, and you thought about me, so thanks. And there's like this great relationship you can have almost with your future self to be like, okay, what is he going to say about my action right now? So it's kind of a weird, wacky way to look at it, but I think that can actually contribute very much to this building the backbone of temperance. Anyways, that's it on temperance. I hope you enjoyed. I'm really passionate about this because it's something I really need to grow in. And it really does affect so many different areas of your life if you can just build the backbone to say no to the lower pleasures so that you can achieve these higher things that will make you so much happier. Anyways, that's it for temperance. I hope you enjoyed. All right, everyone, we are on to section 2 of the podcast. We're talking about online dating. That's right. So let's talk about this stat right here. The Pew Research Center reports that 3 in 10 adults use dating apps. 45% of 18 to 29-year-olds say they have used a dating app. And 45% of all users report frustration from using the apps. Now, let me be very clear. In the beginning, I'm not anti dating apps. I have heard stories where it works out. I think they're very rare. Uh, but I kind of want to dive into these stats because I think they're interesting. I think like you talk about men in the dating market, and it's kind of a weird world out there. I'm off the market, thank God. But I understand a lot of guys are having issues with it. I get it. But the question is like, do these stats actually have any important messages to send to us as men? So 45%, I'll harp on that number. 45% of all users reported frustration from using dating apps, according to the Pew Research Center. Why is that? Well, my guess would be that first off, with the dating apps that are out there, a lot of people do this. Like you've heard of phishing before, right? It's like this idea that you're going to put fake pictures of yourself or like super filtered pictures of yourself on your profile and make yourself look like way more attractive than you are physically. And obviously, the attraction is a amalgam of a lot of things, but or just you can very easily lie about yourself on dating platforms. So you show up to the date and you're like, what the? You said that you were a marine biologist and you work at McDonald's? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of craziness that can happen on that front. That could probably lead to that 45% saying they're frustrated. But here's the thing I think that is like the number one reason that people report frustration with dating apps is because it's so hard to come from two completely different communities or lack of communities even and come together and then have enough commonality to lead a life together, to have a great relationship together. And this is something that has changed a lot recently. Like I would say from the year 2000, I think people have become much more isolated and they aren't part of these communities. And so it's hard to find people that share the same values or beliefs that you do. Now, it used to be like circa 2000 and before that everybody would kind of have their maybe super tight-knit or even loose communities, and then you would find somebody in that community, and because you both were part of that community, you would have shared commonalities. You would have shared beliefs and values and thoughts about the world and how you want to approach life. And then, you sit down to coffee and you're like, oh, damn, you're really awesome. And you're like, oh, you're really awesome. And it's like, oh, these people? I know these people because we're part of the same community. And, you can build this bond that's really strong, and you start from the base level with the same beliefs and thoughts and ideas about life. And one day you could get married and you could live the rest of your life together happily because you started from the same place and you guys are working towards goals together. That all changes when you are from a very fragmented or isolated or non-existent community. Because, especially like politically, things have gotten crazy. But, you come from a completely different community and it's like, well, we agree on like these two big things, but these other 7 big things we really are at odds on. And so, I like you, but I don't think this is going to work. And then that probably happens to tons of people. And there's stories all over the place on the internet about this, where it's like, everything was good until I found out this about you or that about you. And so those things used to be filtered out by the community you were in. I was lucky enough, like in my church community, like everybody had a lot of the same beliefs. There was differences in some things, but for the most part, because we follow the same faith and same religion, well, we all kind of have the same base level of beliefs. And because there's a lot of lack of community in the world today, a lot of people don't have the same beliefs. They don't start from that same place. And so I think it's a lot harder to find people that align with you. Not impossible. Like I said, there are cases where dating apps have worked. But I think it's kind of a sad reflection for like probably a lot of men. It's like if you're not part of a community, it's probably going to be hard to find someone that you could live the rest of your life with. And it's sad. But like, I guess it's a call to be like, start a community, make a better community, and become a part of it. And then, keep your eyes open, I guess, is what I would say. That would be my advice. But it's just an interesting thing about the state of the world. It's like people are so isolated. They get on these dating apps. They meet. And then they say, wow, you're so different than I am. This isn't going to work. And that stems from them not coming from the same place as far as their backgrounds. or what their families believed in, or what their religions were, or all these other aspects of a person's life, they're at crazy odds with one another, and so it doesn't work out. So I think that's probably a big reason why men and women are having a lot of frustration with these dating apps. So my advice is do your best to be part of a community and then get to know people. I think that's the best way to go about it. But I'm not arguing against dating apps. I just thought it was really interesting. 45% of people reported frustration with dating apps. So, anyways, that's all I have to say about the topic or the stat part of the podcast. Was that isn't that weird? And maybe it's a call for, I've said it before, but like men to create better communities, stronger communities where people they're attracted to the communities and they come to them, and then all of a sudden, you guys have started to have a bunch of shared commonalities. I think religion in a lot of ways does that for a lot of guys, but I'm not trying to convert you with this podcast. Yeah, okay, that's all I have to say on that matter. I hope you enjoyed. All right, everyone, we are at that part in the podcast, the Reuben Rants section. So, I'm a hardworking guy, and I'm sure you are too if you're watching this podcast. I'm sure you work very hard for the money you get, but things are tight. The world is expensive. I'm getting married in January. Things are expensive. When you're looking forward to getting married, it's an amazing thing, but there's a lot of stuff you have to consider, and I'm happy to do so. But you look at things, you're like, damn, shit is really expensive. It's kind of gotten out of control. I mean, inflation, with all the inflation that's going on, it's like things have really spiked in price. I'm a hardworking guy. I have to drive to my work every morning. And I've been thinking recently why a $10,000 base model car does not exist. What is up with that? Okay? With things being as tight as they are, with things being as expensive and difficult monetarily for a lot of folks in this world, why has a car company not put on the Superman cape, jumped out and said, I will save you, and just made a $10,000 car? People are going to say, but Reuben, that's impossible. First off, let's get things clear right off the bat. I'm not talking about anything fancy. It needs to have 4 wheels and a combustion engine and get me from A to B. That's what it needs to be. $10,000 brand new car, reliable. Give me like a Honda engine in there. That would be nice, And so I've got solutions. As to how we're going to do this. All right, and this is a call out to you. Toyota, Honda, Ford, one of you. Make this. Make it happen. Here's how you do it. No heated seats. No massagers. I don't need something to heat my ass or to give me a butt massage. That's just not needed. For real. Get it out of there. Don't charge me an extra $2,000 for that feature in the car. Yep, get rid of that. Skylights. Get rid of those. I need a window on the top of my car so I can look at the sky while I'm driving? That doesn't seem safe. Why do you need that anyways? But that's an upcharge. Here's another $2,000. Nope, I don't need it. Get it out of there. There you go. I'm saving you money just like that. Power steering. Now, I'm old enough to remember. I'm actually not that old, but I do remember there were cars. We used to have a truck, my family did, had no power steering. I mean, you just muscled that shit. My fiance right now, her car is out of power steering lines, right? She doesn't have power steering. And it impresses me big time, but she just muscles it, She just makes it happen. And I'm just saying, do we need it? Do we have to have it? Guys, I'm getting it down to $10,000. We are dropping the crap out of this price, okay? So, get rid of power steering. The windows. Do not make them electric. That's one more thing that can go wrong. I want those crank windows. Those things with a little knob on them. You just put around in a circle and the window goes up or down. Manual windows. Let's see. Is there anything else we can do to bring down the price? All the wheels and everything, they can be a cheaper material. Just make sure the engine works well. The body, it can rust, but it's brand new, right? You're getting the car brand new, so the odds of it lasting a while for you as a working person are pretty high. So that's my call. That's my Reuben rants. as a guy who has a 2006 Honda CR-V with over 225,000 miles on it, I'm starting to think about, maybe it's time that a car upgrade is due. And then I started looking at car prices, and I was like, holy shit, that's really expensive. That's really expensive. So the solution is for one of these car companies to be the hero. You have a great opportunity here. Yes, I'm talking to you, Ford. I'm talking to you, Toyota. Porsche, I know you're out of the question. But but Honda, I mean, you guys can do this. One of you just step forward. Make the $10,000 brand new car. Make it bare bones. Advertise it as such. Just say, listen, we're making a reliable vehicle for you to get from A to B. It's got no bells or whistles, but it's a great car. You should come and buy from us. It's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity. So one of you guys, make it happen, okay? It'll be amazing. It'll be amazing. I cannot wait. And that's about it for the Reuben Rant section. But the $10,000 brand new car, it's going to be made. We're going to make it happen, people. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, everyone. That does it for this episode of the Manuscript Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, as always. If you think about it, consider hitting the subscribe button. That'd be pretty cool. I'd appreciate that. All right, that's all I have to say on that front. Thank you so much for watching. As always, remember, there's a better life out there. Let's get after it.